Welcome, everyone, to our fifth Growth Hour webinar from Shed Advisor. My name is Audrey Smith, and I will serve as your moderator today. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A chat box. Or if anyone is calling in by phone, looks like we've got a few phone users. You're welcome to text us your questions. I will read off the phone number for you to text if you want to get a pen and pencil. The number is 540-416-2280. We'll have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, so if you'd like to simply just unmute and ask us directly during that time period, then that would be great. Now, please allow me to introduce our host today. Steve Byler has spent the core of his career in the world of sheds, first with the family business and more recently as part of Ulrich Lifestyle. Today, his focus is on training, coaching, and equipping leaders in business and nonprofit organizations. He's passionate about seeing leaders grow and lead healthy lives because as go the leaders, so go the organizations they lead. He currently serves on the board of the National Shed Association, is a regular columnist in the Shed Business Journal, is a certified speaker and coach with Maxwell Leadership, and is now a certified EOS implementer. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thank you so much, Audrey. Always good to be here with other entrepreneurs and people that are interested in personal growth. And as we say around here, as goes the leader, so goes the organization. So this growth mindset really does matter to leading, growing companies. And by growth, we don't just mean revenue growth. So that is a sample or a particular illustration of growth. So I'm delighted to welcome one of my friends and colleagues in a previous life onto our webinar here today, Loren Miller. Loren currently residing in Texas, and we've worked together in a number of endeavors over the years. So Loren, absolutely delighted to have you here today. So Loren has worked in the space of nonprofits, has been in leadership roles in nonprofits and business, has worked at developing and growing sales teams, and he brings a wide range of leadership skills and abilities to this webinar. He's passionate about developing small business leaders, coaching both them and their sales teams on process creation. So we note he does have, I'd say most of your experiences in the sales side,
Right.
though you have leadership skills in other spaces as well. And he's now a full focus certified coach. And as this coach, he empowers leaders to gain clarity and focus amidst the chaotic demands of both work and personal life. And so just a few personal words here, unscripted, Loren, but delighted to have you. We both have used Full Focus for quite a number of years. And Full Focus really ties around this planner. It's funny, it disappears on the screen. How's that working?
There it is.
Called the Full Focus Planner. And I well remember when I started with the Full Focus Planner, my life was, a really whirlwind of chaos. And the big things that really mattered, that really seemed to be significant to me to get accomplished, just simply weren't happening. I was caught in what we call the tyranny of the urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And in the tyranny of the urgent, the things that were truly important and significant often got displaced by the urgent. So Loren has just taken this another notch further, has invested much more kind of in full focus planning and using their resources to build a focused life. So Loren, welcome today. Let's kick this off. What do you have for us?
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Steve. I will go ahead and share my screen. I do have a presentation here. Let's make sure this can work.
And while you're doing that, I'm just going to note that we're going to use the term full focus multiple times here today, which is really the brand and work of Michael Hyatt and now his daughters. And what we're hoping that we're not here trying to sell you the Full Focus Planner or necessarily the Full Focus system, but we do want you to have a system and realize that you do have a system, broken as it might be, in how you manage and run your life. And these are some tools, whether you use Full Focus Planner, there are other planners, or you just use a blank journal or digital resources. There's some key principles here today that can really help you bring some order and clarity to your life. So Loren, kick us off with what the full focus system does in that
Absolutely.
space.
All right. Sounds good. Now, officially, we'll dive into this. Thank you, Steve, for all of that. And yes, the full focus system has really helped me in just a ton of different aspects. But I go back to, I believe it was like 2018 or somewhere in thereabouts, maybe 17. I lose track of time. And like Steve mentioned, I was working with him. I was head of sales for the small shed company, had 8 or 10 sales team members, and there's just a ton of stuff going on. And I was kind of working between multiple different platforms, digital, notebook, inside of digital, it was, calendar, task management, documents, and it was just kind of this chaotic mess. And I had just started listening to Michael Hyatt and some of his ideas and trying to kind of bring focus in that. And I remember distinctly one day I was sitting in a meeting with Steve and we were just working through some of this. And he said, I have this extra full focus planner that maybe you should try this out. And I said, fantastic. And I tried it and have not looked back since. And I do tell people the planner really, I think, kind of saved my brain, brought my brain back. I mean, it really helped me bring clarity and focus and intentionality like nothing else out there. And so Steve did mention, I don't know that the planner itself is the magical piece, although it is a really, really helpful tool, but there's also concepts that we can use in pretty much anywhere. And so I want to hit that today. I'm going to do this in 2 parts. One is just kind of looking over this full focus system and the concepts around it and a little bit of the planner use. And then I'm going to transition and we'll get it really practical with how do you work on your task list and how do you figure out how to gain momentum and traction on that list. So we're gonna dive into kind of the whole system here. And we're going to start with the common pain points. So what are the common pain points that people face out there? It's dropped task, lack of direction, too much busyness, inescapable distraction, and distant dreams. And I tell you, I was totally in this space, especially the drop tasks, lack of direction, just really spinning out in a lot of ways. And the full focus planner helped me just bring all that back together. And it was, some people argue, well, it's this paper, you have to carry it around, it's a pen. They'd rather just talk into their phone and make a note. And I personally have just found it something about this tangible piece of paper that I can just write. It just works better. And so it was a huge breakthrough for me. And it's a tangible thing that I can actually document, draw if I need to, keep track of all my to-dos, my tasks. And it's really kind of was a game changer for me. So I
want to jump in there.
Go ahead.
Jump in there, Loren. So EOS worldwide now, we use paper. We go into our sessions, we use markers, and they have spent an enormous sum of money and time researching the difference between keyboard and retention versus writing and retention. And that psychological impact of actually physically writing something as opposed to keyboarding gives you a level of clarity. The neuroscience is there in support of it, gives you a level of clarity that simply typing it in or giving an audible note onto your phone just simply doesn't do. So yeah. I'm still a big fan of handwriting, and we can talk about using technology because I use a lot of it, but then also using the more ancient technology, which again, it's technology, it's paper and pen, right?
Yep. No, and that's really good, and I'm glad you brought that in because there is that out there. The studies are out there that it's something about just handwriting on that piece of paper that it just works really well. Okay, here's what the planner did for me and really what it's designed to do. So the dropped tasks get stored in one central spot. It's right there. It's easy to see. It's easy to monitor. For me, it's a lot easier just to flip a page and see it versus trying to scroll through a computer screen somewhere or remember which document I had all this stuff in. You know, too much busyness transitions into clear priorities. There again, there's the process, there's a system behind all this, and we'll get into that in just a second. But this is really what the planner and the full focus system is designed to do, is to take all of these pain points and distractions and give you a really clear place and a method to convert the pain into actual clarity and action items so that you can get really intentional with what you do. So with that, what is this full focus system, and what's it made up of? And there's 5 key practices that I want to address here. And here's what I want everybody here on the call and the webinar here today to note, is that this is a system that was designed to be used with the full focus planner, and it works great with that. Obviously, I love it. But the concepts I want to show you today, you can use today before you even have a planner. You can use it in whatever system that you want to, really. All right, first one is goal setting. So simply put, setting better goals takes you in the right direction. You know, a lot of times we just kind of throw this idea out there and we don't actually work on making the goal actionable, clear and concise. There's a whole process around how to create that goal, how to document that goal. And we won't get into that today, but the point is you've got to get clear on where you're going and what you're trying to drive after. And then the next point is creating constraints. So we think that the more you load in, the busier your day, the more you get done, but that's actually not the case. You do normally, to really get a lot done and to get a lot of momentum, you have to constrain yourself and put boundaries in place so that you can actually focus on what's important. And getting clear about what matters is the key to productivity, not necessarily just burning through a bunch of tasks.
It's doing the right things.
Yes, doing the right thing, not just things for the sake of things. So the constraints that full focus talks about and really teaches are breaking it down into the 3 main categories, 3 main things, 3 most important. So we have quarterly big threes, weekly big threes, and daily big threes. And what this is designed to do is you take your goal, so typically an annual goal, and you'll break down into quarterly sections, like what are the big 3 things this quarter that you need to accomplish to get that annual goal done. And then you go into your weekly big 3 and you break down what are the big 3 things this week that need to be accomplished. So example could be one of these could tie to that quarterly big 3 so that you make sure you're on track with that. And it may just be a shorter initiative that you need to do this week and really focus on that to make sure that you're gaining momentum in another area. And then your daily big 3, you break that down to say, all right, so today, what are the 3 things that I have got to get done? I mean, it's like my life depends on it. I am going to work and focus on these 3 things. And there again, the concept is you could take one of those that ties to your weekly big 3, and then the other 2 could be just small things that have to happen today, but always kind of with that intention of moving forward towards the weekly, the quarterly, and the annual. But there again, research and study has shown when you focus on 3 things, the likelihood of getting it done is a lot greater than what if you just have a list of 15 tasks for the day. If you have a list of 15, the default tends to be, I go to the simplest, I go to the easiest, I get distracted, and then I lose traction. So really getting this down into being disciplined on focusing on those big 3 will really help gain that momentum. So I want you guys to take this concept and really hone in on it and practice it. The big 3s, break it down into 3 things: quarterly, weekly, and daily. This can be done anywhere, anyhow. Obviously, with the planner, it's seamless. It works great. The next one is reflection. So the next key practice is reflection and then planning. I'm going to put these 2 together because when we integrate these 2 practices, then you can learn from your past and then shape your future. And I personally think this is probably the kingpin to actually making this whole system work. And here's why I think that. On when you sit down and you actually reflect on what worked, what didn't work, where your wins were, how you progressed on your goals, and then you turn and you look into the future and you say, now what needs to be the same? What needs to be moved forward from this past week? How can I learn differently? What can I implement differently? It's just when you take past experience and you transition that to the future, it's like a game changer for you. So come on here.
I can just comment there, Loren.
Yes.
One of the things I love about that, and I find so many of us entrepreneurs have difficulty stopping to reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And we often get the sense that it's the amount of work we get done, it's our productivity that matters most.
Mm-hmm.
And with our productivity comes experience, and experience is the best teacher. Okay, you hear that all the time. Experience is a wonderful teacher. But if you don't actually take the time to reflect on your experiences, you typically stay in the same groove of repeating the experiences and not actually learning from them. So
Yes.
It's only experience that's reflected on that results in wisdom that allows you to alter course about what you're actually going to do in the future. So that reflection is the critical piece. And the other thing I just note here from my own experience, we don't reflect well if we're not rested. So when you're exhausted, you don't reflect well on your experiences. So no wisdom's going to come out of that. But when you get some rest first, and then let your brain go to work reflecting, and it allows the brain actually starts putting pieces together to make you that much more effective in the future.
Yes, 100%. You would think Steve read my notes.
I'm sorry.
That rest. No, you're good. I'm just saying this is like it's legit. There is in part two, what we're getting to is also this whole energy and how you have to have that rest to get that to build your energy and to actually work. But back to the preview, the weekly preview, the quarterly preview, taking time. And this is what I think is probably the hardest thing. What I've seen people struggle with the most is actually taking the time. So calendar the time to do your reviews and stick to it. I go back over the years, and when I felt the most out of control and just floundering and spinning, I could always point back and say, my weekly review was the one thing I neglected. It has the anchoring effect of it forces you to stop and do the deep work to reflect, to learn, and then to adjust. And that is super critical. So weekly basis and a quarterly basis are the two key things that we teach in the full focus system. And then the last one is automate. So in this, the last of the 5 key practices is automate. So how can you automate normal things? And we'll get into more detail on this a little bit later as well. But the kind of the 2 big things here in the full focus system is your daily rituals. So how can you automate little things and turn them into habits? So how can you do little habits that you just do day in and day out? The way you begin your work day, the way you end your work day. Something like you shut the computer down at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever your work day end is, and you begin to build those habits in that you don't have to think about anymore. And then the ideal week is probably another one of those really big game changers that you can take away from here and just implement this. And I'm telling you guys, you put this ideal week in place, and then you start being intentional and scheduling your week around that, it's a game changer. You can do this 2 ways. I use Google Calendars. You can create a second calendar inside of that is called your ideal week, and you can just map it all out there, and then you can turn it on and off. What I've found personally is if I just take my normal work calendar and I create my ideal week in that calendar, and it sticks. It's on repeat every week for however long it needs to go, and it stays in there. I can bake in open free time, but what this does is it forces me and or the team to tangle with what's already built into the calendar. I have to be very intentional about changing that actual task or event or whatever that ritual is to make room for something else that's coming in. And when I have to do it that way, then it's kind of an obstacle I have to overcome. And I'm more likely to just push it into my free time that I'm actually have allotted for this space. So create that ideal week. And most of this really comes down to once you do it, then it's just a discipline of sticking to it and making it work.
And if I could just, I'm going to give you an objection, Loren.
Sure.
So you're selling the ideal week here. The objection that shows up in our heads is, I'm not in control of my week. Somebody else is. I have to take phone calls. I have to do all this other stuff. And I start out the day and I can have all the best laid plans in the world. But at the end of the day, somebody else dictates my entire life. And so I'm done. You're on weed or something. You're living in la la land here, Loren.
100% been there many, many times. First thing I'm going to say to that, if you start with no ideal objective, no ideal goal, you will never attain any traction and momentum. So you've got to at least start with it, and then give yourself permission to not live to it 100% and or to screw it up. That's okay. But you have something though that you're driving towards and after. Now, the second part of that is when you are not in control of your week. What I've found is that is more of a head thing than what you realize. If you start building out your ideal week, and then you start working with your boss, your team members, whoever it is that keeps interrupting you, and you start showing them why you're doing what you're doing and how that they can then interact with you, most times they will start working with you on that. And my very practical thing is I led sales teams, and they would constantly bombard me with questions and all these issues. And I intentionally left blocks on my calendar that were for the sales team. And I trained them to watch and look at my calendar before they called me. If it wasn't burning the building down, then wait until that window of availability, and then you can call me and I'm available. So there are little things that you can do to actually work through this and around it. But yes, there are days you're just going to totally screw it up. It's okay. But don't. Here's a good example. Have you ever eaten a bad meal? Yes, of course. Did you stop eating? No. You just tried another meal. So create your ideal calendar. You don't like it one week, it screws up. Whoop-de-doo. Don't stop doing it. Just learn, repeat, adjust, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and the other thing I would note is that all of us have a certain mix of reactive responsibilities and proactive responsibilities.
Yeah.
In other words, reactive responsibilities in that we're responsible to answer questions, needs, incoming phone calls, emails. And if you allow all of that to dominate, then that deep workspace, those projects, those big important things that need to be done, they simply get pushed to the background. And nobody else is going to say, hey, listen, you have something really important to do right now, Loren. I'm going to give you an hour to do that uninterrupted. They're not going to do that. And if this is critical to your future, it's critical to your career, you're the one that's going to have to say, I have this. It's really important. It's one of my big things this quarter. It's one of my big things this week. It's my big thing today. I'm going to block out this time, and unless there's a hurricane or a snowstorm or a fire escape call, leave me alone. I've got this work to do. You can begin to shift the ratio of reactive lifestyle to proactive life. And if you're going to go from being, I'm going to change my language there. I don't want to be on record as having said what I was thinking. Okay. If you're going to truly grow as an individual and lead a growing team, a growing business, you're going to have to be more proactive. And the ratio of proactive time that you invest, which means it's calendared and it's dedicated, that has to grow, and the reactive stuff has to shrink. But I think you're going to deal with that here in the next section. So I'll let you press on. We'll get there.
Sure. Fair enough. Okay, so bringing all this together for kind of finalizing phase one here is the full focus planner is actually the tool that kind of embodies all of this. It's laid out. It makes it simple. It makes it easy for you. And there again, let me be quick to say, it will not do the work for you. You still have to use it. You still have to stay disciplined. You still have to want to do it, but it is a game changer. And it just gives you that track to run, gives you that system to use, and it just makes it super easy to get into that. So hopefully if you take nothing else out of this, if you never even used a planner, fine, that's beside the point. That's, but don't forget, get very intentional, break it into those 3 big categories for the quarterly, weekly, and daily, and then bring that structure to your ideal week, and actually start building in, how am I going to prioritize my time so that I can focus and get the important things done and move that forward. Okay, I am going to switch. So I'm going to stop screen share here for just a minute, and I'm going to switch over to the phase 2 here. So give me just a second.
And while you're doing that, I'm making an announcement here that if you're on this call and you'd like to have a hard copy of the Full Focus Planner in your hands because it interests you, I have a free copy. I have a copy right here in my hands. And it's funny how it just disappears unless I get it in front of me. Right. But I have a copy here I'm going to give to someone. And if you drop me an email, steve@sjbyler.com with my name, with your name and email address, we're going to pick a winner. And you'll get a copy. It's brand new. I promise I didn't start it. Brand new Full Focus Planner. I think they're about $50 on Amazon or on Full Focus. So if you're interested, again, drop me an email and we're going to pick a winner.
I love it. Thank you, Steve. I did not know that was coming. I appreciate it. And, it's just funny because when I started out, obviously, I already said, Steve gave me my first Full Focus planner. He said, I've got an extra copy here, try it. And here we are. So it's definitely been a game changer for me. So guys, take advantage of that and go ahead and use it out. All right. So we're going to transition now into the Freedom Focus portion. And this is where I hope this can get really tactical for you guys, really practical, and really help you start breaking down, what does your day look like? What are you working on? And how do you gain momentum in this? Most approaches to productivity actually focus on getting more done in less time. And if anybody has tried that, usually what happens, your to-do list is growing faster than what you can knock them off. And you just get into this rat race, this hamster wheel, and it's exhausting. So instead of getting more stuff done, we actually need to focus on getting the right stuff done. So how do you figure out what that right stuff is? And hopefully today we can get into that a little bit and help you get some clarity. So we're going to start with the time-energy paradox. So basically, time is fixed. You can't change that, but energy flexes. So you all have 168 hours a week, same as everybody else. But have you ever stopped to think, why is it that guy over there getting more done than I'm getting done? Or how come am I getting more done than somebody else? We all have the same amount of time, but some people just tend to be able to get more things done. And I really think it comes back to actually understanding how to utilize your time and how to actually prioritize the things that you work on. So we're going to look at that here. There's an exercise that I would encourage you guys to do. And basically what that is you're going to figure out what your hourly rate is. Some of you know that right off the bat. It's easy. You get paid by the hour. Some others, it's going to be a little harder to figure that out. You're going to have to look at your yearly. You're going to break it down and figure out about how many days a year I work, what my hours are. You can break all that down and find out what your hourly rate is. Speaking of which, Audrey, did you grab that email from me with that handout? Can you drop that in the chat, please, if you have absolutely. It? So we're not going to actually take time now to go through this, but there is a handout that I'm going to give you guys, and you can just work down through that. It just gives you a good idea of how to actually create your or find out what your hourly rate is. And when you know that, now you can start comparing. Okay, so if I do this task, it's actually costing me this much money to do this task. So it's just a good way to kind of do a check and balance of, is this really a good use of my time? Okay, and now the second part of this is the energy level. So energy is renewable. You can strategically cultivate it. You can generate more energy. And here is now where Steve read my notes. There are 5 categories to rejuvenation. It is sleep, eat, move, connect, and relax. But I guarantee you, most of us, we will compromise somewhere in here. Sleeping, exercising, relaxing. It's, rejuvenation is not the reward for work. It is the prerequisite for work. Most of us work so we can rest, but I would argue that you need to rest so that you can work. You need to sometimes.
I'm going to give you some theological support for that. Just
all right,
quickly.
go ahead.
Okay. So old pastor shows up here, Genesis 1 and 2, right? 6 days of creation. Man is created on day 6, rest on day 7, which means man's first full day on earth, he rested. Okay, theologically, I think that's always been the posture. We find a place of rest. We work from the rest. We don't work to earn our rest. And as a pastor, I mean, this came as a shift to me within the last 10 years, I'm embarrassed to say. But it's absolutely critical. Rest is a gift that we have in front of us to receive. And if you don't receive it, you're going to run yourself into the ground. Go ahead and receive the gift, accept it, and see it as preparation for your work, for your service in the world. Anyhow, yes. Sorry for the interruption. But give us those 5 things again. Sleep, eat.
Yes. Sleep, eat, move, connect, relax. And I mean, I guarantee you, I know I do. I screw most of these up, honestly. Sleep, I really try to get good sleep. Eating is probably my next one. And then from there on, it just kind of starts falling apart. I have to be extremely intentional about it. But the better you get at taking time and being really healthy around these, the more energy you get, the more energy you get, the more productive you are, the more productive you are. It goes from there. Okay, so step 1 that you're going to do is capture tasks. And so if you got that handout there in the chat, we won't take time to do all this now, but you can just take notes and then kind of walk through how to do all this. But you're going to capture all your tasks, and you're going to start narrowing those down, consolidating them, and we're going to start looking at which ones should you actually be focusing on and working through. So you're going to check your calendar, your planner, email, anywhere that you have any tasks that live out of your head, whatever it is. Just write all those down, and then you're going to start measuring your passion and your proficiency. So passion and proficiency, that's going to start segmenting what this looks like. To get the right stuff done, we need to understand the value of time and consider how prioritizing rejuvenation can fuel productivity. And how do we identify the activities we should be completing? It comes down to the dimensions of passion and proficiency. If my slide would go, there it is. All right. So passion reflects an internal experience of work, emphasis on internal. So this is what you enjoy. This is what comes probably naturally for you, but you get a lot of energy out of it. You love what you do, and you could probably get just lost in time when you're doing this thing. It just bubbles out of you. So this is your passion. Proficiency, on the other hand, is the external validated skill. And so the emphasis here on external. This is the thing that you are really good at. You can knock it out. You are normally better than your peers at. You get better results with less effort than other people. You just roll through this. And proficiency is usually validated by things like a scorecard metric. Your peers, saying, dude, I don't see how you do that as good as you do. That's your proficiency. So the difference is passion is that thing just I love to do. Proficient is something that I am super good at. Might not love it, but I'm super good at it. Okay, so back to your list. What you're going to do now is you're going to go down through that whole list of tasks, and you're going to go behind it and you're going to write down, am I passionate about this? Am I proficient in this? If I'm neither one, you're going to just leave it blank. And we'll come back to that after a bit. And then step 3 is you're going to determine now what your freedom compass zones are. So this is the freedom compass. Really what we're looking for is there's 4 quadrants here, and you're going to look for where's your sweet spot and what do you do with everything else in between. Zone 4 is the one we're going to start with. This is your drudgery zone. This is your low passion and low proficiency. So you guessed it. I hate it. I'm not good at it. Therefore, guess what? It's a waste of time, waste of talent, waste of energy. You should not be doing this.
That's what I say is this is where we go to die.
Yes, it feels like death, that's for sure. And it will kill you over time, believe me, if not physically, mentally, and emotionally. So get rid of the drudgery zone, and we'll get it a little more practical in a bit on how to do all that, but just start thinking through, this is the spot you do not want to be hanging out in. And then zone 3 is your distraction zone. This is where you have high passion and low proficiency. So the distraction zone is a little harder to identify because you enjoy it. It's fun to do this, but you're not so good at it. My personal example of this is spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. I love what they do. I love what they tell me. I love the data. I love putting a formula in there and it spits out this magical answer. But I'm not proficient at it. It takes me forever to build a spreadsheet, and I'm just not good at it. But if I let myself, I can spend hours building out this fancy fancy spreadsheet, but it's not the best use of my time. Somebody else is better at it. They could do it in half the time, probably work better. All right, and then zone 2 is the disinterest zone. This is your low passion and your high proficiency. So this is one that you may not enjoy doing, but you are good at it. You can knock it out all day long. And it's usually important things. This is usually high leverage things that you need to do. They're important to be done, but you just don't enjoy it. So it's kind of this disinterest. You kind of push it off if you can because you don't want to, you don't enjoy it, but you're good at it and you have to do it. But still, it's not the best use of your time. And then zone 1 is your true north. That is the desire zone. This obviously, you guessed it, has the high passion and high proficiency. This is where the work is that you were made to do. This is where you give the highest possible contribution. Everything's clicking and coming together for you. So now on that exercise, what you're going to do is you're going to look at your task filter, and now you're going to go in behind, and there's a spot there for you to actually fill in your zones. So if you have neither passion or proficiency, you want to write drudgery in there, drudgery zone. If you have passion but no proficiency, that's going to be your distraction zone. And then if you have proficiency but no passion, that's your disinterest zone. And then obviously if you have passion and proficiency, you're going to write your desire zone. And then step 4, we're going to evaluate your task. So now you need to figure out, what are you going to do with these tasks and how are you going to actually move the needle with these? All right, very simple. First question you're going to ask is this activity worth the investment of time and money? Just end of statement. Is it worth time and money to do this task? If no, voila, guess what? Get rid of it. Eliminate it. Don't do it anymore. Nobody needs to do it. Get rid of it. And it's crazy how many times as you go down through there, you can actually find things that you're doing that you're like, you know what? It's really dumb. Why am I doing this? And just get rid of it. But if it is worth investment time and money, the second question then is, does this activity require human problem solving? So does it need a human to interact with it? Or if not, can I automate it? So how can I automate this? This could be some technology, built-in redundancies, could be processes built into this. And we'll get into that in just a little bit more in detail later on. But you're looking for, is there a way that I can take human interaction out of this and just let a system do this for me? If you do have to have a human interacting with it, then the next question is, do you have to be the one to do this? Do you have to be the one that actually does this task? And if no, then you're going to delegate it. You're going to look for somebody else on your team, somebody that you can hire, some assistant somewhere. We'll get into delegation here in a bit as well, but you're going to delegate that, get that off your plate. And if you have to be the person to do it, then obviously you have to do it. And that's now the section that you should be focused on. So take that entire task list, and now you start working down through that, and you start asking these questions, and you're looking for the ones that you can just knock off, get rid of. Which ones can I automate? Which ones can I delegate? And now what am I left with to do?
Yeah, if I could just insert a few comments here, Loren.
Yes, please.
I think I'm just remembering a book by Marcus Buckingham and research that he did.
Mhm.
And he noted the difference between doing what I love versus the stuff I like doing. And he noted that in his research, we only need to get to be in the love zone about 20% of our working time to have really high level of job satisfaction.
Hmm.
So we're all going to have to do things that we don't like to do, that we can't delegate because of stage of life, stage of business, because the boss won't let us, whatever the reason is. And yet we only need to have 20% of our lives doing what we truly love to be highly satisfied with our job. He did note, however, that you need a little bit of it every day. It can't be 1 day out of 5, but it can be an hour a day and then 4 hours one day.
Yes.
That works. And so again, most of us can't really free up our lives to only do what we're passionate about. Now, be honest with you, I'm getting awfully close. Okay. But I've spent, 55 years doing a bunch of stuff I hate. And now Audrey's an example. I get somebody on my team who loves doing the stuff I hate doing. And, nerds, and I've got a bookkeeper, and you find these ways of dumping this trash. And I told them, there's only 3 things I want to do with my life. And you folks have to set me free to do these 3 things. Well, I have an incredibly high level of job satisfaction now. I didn't get here overnight. Most 20-year-olds can't get there. Probably most 30s and 40s can't. But if you follow this process consistently, you stay committed to the journey, you build enough value, and really your value is greatest and will always be the greatest where you are actually most passionate and most highly skilled.
Yes. Yes.
Okay? And so you can actually build a life out of that given enough time. But you've got to stay focused on it.
Yes.
You've got to keep working, stay on the pathway.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. And you're 100% right. Like you probably will end up doing most of your work in zones 2 and 1. Like there are things that you're proficient at, you have to do to get the job done and keep your business afloat and keep your boss happy and all those things that you may not just absolutely love, but it's part of the territory. It's part of it. You just have to do it. But if you're very intentional as you build out, as you can, and as you control more and more, and as you build out your life in the future, like you just said, this is the pathway and this is the grid work to try to keep pushing towards that ultimate. How do I get everything into that zone 1? And I know there are a few people that are in that zone 1, and that's all they do is zone 1 work. But that's not the reality for a lot of people, at least not early on in life. Okay, sounds good. Let me just do a quick look here. We have
a couple of minutes left.
Few
We'll
minutes
take a
left.
few questions.
All right, I'm gonna hit a couple quick things here. So in eliminate, that's pretty straightforward. Just get rid of it. In automate, a couple things I want you guys to take away from this. Automation can be as simple as creating a template in your email. It can be as simple as filtering your emails so that if it comes from this certain sender, put it in this folder automatically for me. Look for ways that you can actually get as much of that just automatically categorized and filed and things like that. Templates. So templates are huge. I already mentioned that, like for emails. If you're doing meeting notes, consistently doing the same meetings over and over, create all your meeting notes as a template. And all you have to do is just fill in a few little bullet points along the way. Templates are huge. And then look for ways that you can either build processes, workflows, things like that, that you can just, at the more that you can build out and do the hard work once, and then next time around, you just pick it up and you just kind of mindlessly follow that. It just makes your life so much easier. So that's an element of automation. And then the last one, self-automation, is kind of those habits. How do you do just the daily habits that you don't even think about what you're doing? It just starts going normally, and you don't waste the time to stop and think, process, and figure out what your next move is. And then delegate. I won't spend a lot of time here, but if you can delegate, find people that you can push this off to and have them do it. Steve and Audrey are a great example of this. Like Steve mentioned, he hates to do something, but Audrey loves to do that thing. And it's like, at least if he's like me, it blows my mind that anybody would love to do something I hate, but there are people out there, so look for it. But when
I got over that. I got over that a good few years ago.
When
you're creating opportunity for people, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, it's their desire zone. I mean, it's their sweet spot. But when you do delegate, make sure you're crystal clear on what you're trying to do. Don't just dump it and run away, because you will both be miserably disappointed. So get intentional with how you delegate, be clear on your expectations, be clear on what you want to have done, what the parameters are, how they, are going to work inside of this, and then hand that off. And then the last one here is develop. You can develop passion and proficiency. Okay, it takes time, it takes intentionality, but you can. Normally what happens is the more proficient you get at something, I shouldn't say normally, it can happen. The more proficient you get at something, your passion will grow forward.
Yeah.
And or if you have a passion for it and you work at it, you will get more proficient, so that at times you can create a sweet spot out of one that was misaligned previously. But be careful with it, do it over a short period of time, test it. And if you're finding that your passion and proficiency are growing, phenomenal. If not, ditch it, if possible, and look for another.
Yeah, and if you really have a passion for something, you're not proficient at it, just call it a hobby.
There you go. Perfect. I like it. Okay, that's the end. Q&A.
Okay, I'm gonna just reiterate a couple of things here. Remind you, I have a free copy of the Full Focus Planner. If you're interested in a copy, just drop your name and full mailing address to steve@sjbyler.com, and we'll pick a winner from that list. And then here's another one. I'm an EOS guy now, so I had to switch from Full Focus Planner to the EOS Planner. Okay, and it's interesting. They are so similar, Loren. But you've got to choose a system. No matter what system you work with, choose a system that works well for you. And having a system allows a lot of the clutter just to go out of your mind. You're not making all these decisions. You're committing to a basic process. So I'm actually going to have the audacity to give 2 planners away. Okay. So not only going to give one away, a Full Focus one, I'm going to give away a EOS planner as well to help you build your EOS life. So there's actually going to be 2 winners. So just drop your name, email address to us in an email, and we'll get these sent out to our 2 favorite people on the list.
Perfect.
We'll do some random drawing. We won't pick favorites. Okay, let's
open
open it up for questions or responses. So Audrey, we'll turn it to you.
Feel free to unmute if you have a question. I don't think we have a raise your hand feature on this particular webinar.
Okay, so anybody feel free to unmute.
If you're on the phone, you can still text 540-416-2280. And while you're doing that, Loren, I did have one submission. Can you speak to your personal or business experience in what your biggest struggle is and how you combat that?
My biggest struggle in business and how I combat that, yes. I would say probably my biggest struggle is the shiny object syndrome. I get easily distracted, and I'm just sporadic all over the place. So the way I combat that is really is spending time ahead of my day to get into my planner what I want to do, what really is important. And then I'm ruthless with avoiding distraction. I turn my phone notifications off. Like, you guys would probably be laughing at me. My phone, I don't have the little red dots next to my apps. I don't have a ton of apps on my phone. I turn it, it's always on vibrate, and there's certain times of the day it will go to do not disturb. Just ways to get that off. Back when I was leading, multiple sales team members and whatever, it was like, even at that point, I would just say, do not bother me, because I will get so distracted and into the weeds. The next thing I know, the day's gone and I didn't get anything done. So it really comes down to intentionality and focus. And then what are those 3 things that I'm actually going to work on today to get done?
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, thank you for that, Loren. I do think every company needs people who respond immediately to inbound requests.
Mhm.
Okay, and if you're a fire department, for example, which is a space that you've worked in, Loren,
Yes.
you can't have a calendar time at which people can call in their emergencies. Somebody has to take that. Somebody has to take it. And so this is the challenge of leadership. We increasingly have to remove ourselves one level from being that reactive responder to the urgencies, but we have to see to it that it's covered. And then that the person who receives it, if I truly am the only one who can answer this question, there is one person who can interrupt anything I'm doing. So, for me, that was, Audrey, it was you for a while, right? It was the executive assistant. And incoming calls, urgencies come to somebody who is responsible to be reactive. And they can get you to who you need to get to. But you have to build these bit of protective buffers around if you're going to get your big things done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion out there about these open door policies for executives. If you're going to have a complete open door policy in most business situations, it means the executive is going to have to do his deep work and important work after hours.
Yeah.
And you just have to own that.
Yeah.
Okay. And usually that's not sustainable over a long period of time. And particularly in a small business, I can say this, and I work with a few teams like this. You've got the founder, the owner, 25 employees, and they all have to get answers from him, from the founder owner. Okay. And the founder owner is kind of defensive of that, because guess what? He feels pretty important when he gets to answer all these questions. But then there's a reason his overall business plan is not getting developed. His business isn't on that strategic pathway. He's spending 100% of his time in the reactive zone.
Yeah.
And that's where, the pathway you gave there to delegation is so critical to scaling and growing, or even to personal growth. We have to have space to do that deep work.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say, even in the reactionary, I spent years in that frontline reactionary space, but you just have to be intentional with it. And you have to know that, I will be available for reactionary, but there are blocks of time throughout the day that I will, to the best of my ability, just put aside time to work on what's important to move the team forward and do the next thing. And then to the point of the open door policy, I personally don't like that. I would rather the accessible policy. There are certain times of the day that I am accessible. I'm free for you guys to come and interact, but I am not open door, come interrupt me all day long whenever you want. I just don't think that's sustainable. It's not good for the company.
Okay, Loren, thank you so much for joining us. And I just realized one of the things we didn't address, you have one of your downloads, one of your handouts here in the chat box. We also have an additional handout, a sample, a weekly planner. So
Yes.
Again, we're going to, if you email, again, just drop us an email, steve@sjbyler.com. And we can also, if you request the handouts, we can email those to you. And
I
that's,
just dropped that in the chat too. So if you want,
so you can grab it from chat right now.
Yep.
And if you're listening to this, on YouTube a week or two from now, those are still available. Be sure to email steve@sjbyler.com. My email should be on the webinar here as well. And we'll get those handouts to you as well. Audrey, anything else as we wrap up here?
Just our next webinar dates. I put them in the chat. They're all the way up at the top. The next one is going to be March 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Oh, look at you. You've got them there. And did we decide on the 25th or the 15th? Just want to make sure I've got it right.
Well, I couldn't find the date, so I made one up.
Okay. We'll do
So
the.
you have the 15th?
I had the 15th, but we'll send it out. We'll include it.
It's going to be it's either a 1 or a 2 in front of the 5.
Yep.
There's a reason I'm not in charge of these things normally.
By our 5th webinar, you'd think that we'd have this down by now, but we'll get that figured out and we'll communicate it to everyone. So thanks so much for joining today, guys.
Thank you, and y'all have a great day.
Thank you all.